I'm Dr. Jodie Ingalls and I'm from the Centenary Institute's Molecular Cardiology program, and I'm here with one of our patients, Mark Maxwell, who's a cardiac arrest survivor, and he's going to tell us a bit about his story.
Right, so my heart story, I'm 25 now, and when I was 18, 7 years ago, I was down in Australia. I was working and living in a school called St. Joseph's College in Hunters Hill. It's a big sort of rugby school, and so my school in Ireland was the equivalent of Riverview, which is St. Ignatius, and we had this exchange program with them. So I was down in Joey's, working, living and playing rugby and that sort of stuff, and I ended up training like 7 hours a day. So the goal for me was to use Australia as a platform to become a professional rugby player back in Ireland. And I was training 7 hours a day, fit as a fiddle, the healthiest 18-year-old you ever would have met. And one day I was in New Zealand on a little holiday with a couple of friends, and I was asleep on the back of a bus, and the lads noticed that I was gone a little bit blue, and they all thought I was just kind of joking around and trying to draw attention and that sort of thing, until they realized that I couldn't breathe. And so they stopped the bus, they had to carry me off, and they, on the side of the road, gave me CPR. And they were all rugby players, so they actually managed to kind of fracture my rib a little bit pushing down too hard. And the ambulance came, they gave me 6 shocks of an external defibrillator, and they turned to my friends and said there's no sign of life. And then they decided to shock me one more time, just because I was a lot sort of bigger back then, and they said okay, maybe he can handle one more shock, and they shocked me a 7th time, and that's where they got a sign of life. So I was whisked into an ambulance, put in a coma for a week, and then came out of it. So I could never play rugby again, but I still play like touch and all that sort of stuff, and still keep a really active lifestyle. So yeah, I guess the key to me kind of making it through the incident was, there was 2 or 3 factors. So the first one was the fact that I was in a public place and there was people around me. If I was on my own, I wouldn't have got through it, no way. Secondly was the fact that the people who were with me, my friends, knew how to do CPR. So we were in this bus on the side of a motorway, and there was no hospitals or anything around. So these guys needed to keep me alive for as long as it took until the ambulance got there. And luckily there was 3 or 4 of them, and they had all done the CPR training in school, and so they knew what to do, and they rotated in and out. And those 3 guys just kept me alive for 7 to 10 minutes. And then the third factor was the fact that the ambulance was able to make it there. And the reason that was important, not because of the actual ambulance, but because they had a defibrillator there. And so when the CPR can only go so far, and it kept me going, but it wouldn't have got me going much longer. Luckily the defibrillator was on hand then to shock me back into, or shock my heart back into normal rhythm and get me going again. So the fact that the guys knew how to do CPR was key, and then that wouldn't have done it on its own. I had to have a defibrillator nearby, and that finished it off for me.
Yeah, so it's probably surprising then that a lot of the patients and families that we see have had a cardiac event, like a cardiac arrest, and there's no cause for that identified.
Yeah.
And this is something that we're focused on better understanding in our research. So we set up the Australian Genetic Heart Disease Registry in 2007, and the main aim of that is to enrol every Australian family with an inherited heart condition. And these are the diseases that can cause sudden cardiac death and cardiac arrest. So they're very important diseases in our community. The registry, the main aim of it really is to provide awareness and education for the community about what sudden cardiac death is and how people can be better prepared for sudden cardiac death in the community. You know, things like public access to fibrillation and knowing CPR and things like that. But the other aspect of the registry is about having a big database of patients and families that we can learn more about these diseases and actually understand why young people have cardiac arrest and die suddenly. So
that's the thing. So it's the sudden aspect of it. I was so fit and healthy. I was the last person on that bus you would have expected to have been sick or had a cardiac issue. But it actually, I've heard other stories of it happening to rugby players and guys in other sports as well. How does it happen to young and fit people?
So in a large proportion we think that they're inherited heart conditions. So these are conditions that you're born with, and they're passed on in the genes.
And go undetected up until the age.
And then for some reason on a particular day you might have an event. And for some people that first event can be a sudden cardiac arrest or death. and for other people it might be a symptom that triggers them to go to a cardiologist, and they get a diagnosis, and then they can be better managed.
Yeah. Well, it was for me. It was very close to death. I'm told it was miraculous that I kind of made through it. And obviously, for most cases, they don't make it through it, and it seems like a preventable sort of thing if the awareness was out there.
So our registry has recruitment sites all across the country, and we've got
Website
and Facebook page, and a lot of information out there for the public to be more aware of these conditions.
Okay, and then you're doing the genetic testing as well.
Yeah, so genetic testing can help us to understand where the heart tests fail to identify something. In some cases, genetic testing can actually identify what the underlying cause is, which can then be useful information for the family to know as well.
Yeah, well that's the main thing for me, I guess, because now that I've made all the lifestyle changes and no more rugby and etc., it's what's going to happen to my kids that I want to know, and that's where I guess all the trust is in you guys and finding the answer to these questions. Yeah, well,
we're working very hard on it.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for everything you do.
No, thank you for your time today, and thanks for telling your story.
Not at all.
Thank you.